call yourself queen, but you will never be queen in Kattegat.
She endured for 20 years, just waiting for an opportunity. She didn't want to prove how remarkable she was, but wanted to tell others that she would definitely take back what she lost with her own hands. Lagertha drew her sword and, with a wave, charged with all her men towards Aslog, the woman who had stolen her husband. Just a few days ago, Bjorn had taken almost all the warriors to raid the Mediterranean, and Ragnar had taken a group of old men. The defenses of Kattegat were now very empty. Lagertha planned to take advantage of this opportunity to reclaim the happiness and status that should have been hers. But Ragnar's 2 sons were still there. Lagertha couldn't bear to kill her ex-husband's bloodline, so the next day, Lagertha invited Ub and Sigurd to Hedeby as guests. During the dinner banquet, Lagertha's girlfriend Astrid began probing the 2 brothers, trying to find out the remaining military strength of the Kattegat Strait. But the 2 brothers weren't fools either. They directly avoided this sensitive topic. Seeing that she couldn't get anything out of them, Astrid used the beauty trap. Just as Ub was getting intimate with the female slave arranged by Astrid, Astrid brought people and barged into the room, directly capturing him. The 2 brothers were successively tricked and imprisoned. By the time they reacted, Lagertha had already arrived at the Kattegat Strait with her men. They launched a surprise attack from both land and water routes. Lagertha waved her sword, and several hundred warriors fiercely charged towards the unsuspecting village. At the same time, the naval troops also successfully landed. They were unstoppable, catching the enemy and crazily slaughtering them. Aslog's team immediately organized a strong shield formation to block the road and fend off the other side's opportunity. But in terms of talent in warfare, even 10 Aslogs were no match for 1 Lagertha. When the 2 sides were at a stalemate, Lagertha ordered a pair of archers to climb onto the houses and shoot at the enemy's rear, instantly shattering their shield formation. After gaining an absolute advantage, Lagertha didn't hastily exterminate the villagers. After all, these people had once been her subjects too. Aslog knew she had lost, so she took out the sword that symbolized the king's power. She put on decent clothes and, holding the sword with both hands, came before Lagertha.
How strange, Lagertha, that you should play the usurper. One woman against another doesn't quite fit with your reputation.
Now, there's never the usurper, always the usurped. You took my husband, my world, and my happiness. The fact that you're a woman is neither here nor there.
Aslog began mocking Lagertha again, saying she couldn't have children. After marrying Ragnar, not only did she give birth to 4 sons for him, but they had all grown up now. Then Aslog threw the sword on the ground, saying she wouldn't fight Lagertha. She only begged Lagertha to spare her. That way, she could ensure that her sons would not come to take revenge on Lagertha.
I understand.
The expression on Aslog's face gradually changed from smug to stiff. What she never understood until her death was that in this world, anyone who dared to threaten Lagertha had, without exception, all gone to be reincarnated. After killing Aslog, Lagertha officially became the Queen of Kattegat. Before long, Lagertha released Ub and Sigurd. Upon learning the news that their mother had been killed, the grief-stricken Ub rushed up to avenge his mother. Ub also displayed extraordinary combat power, but Lagertha remained calm and collected from beginning to end. As Ub gradually approached, Lagertha just lightly waved her arm, and a group of men easily subdued him. After the 2 brothers were locked up, they decided to wait for Vikings and Ivar to return, then discuss countermeasures and take revenge on Lagertha together. At the same time, Bjorn had already sailed the fleet to the coast of Francia. The vigilance in Francia was very high now. judging from the flags on the sails. It was the Duke of Normandy. It seemed that Rollo had become the Duke of Normandy by this time. Bjorn didn't attack these ships, but let them go back and report that he wanted to talk to his uncle Rollo. Everyone came to Rollo's castle. Rollo warmly welcomed Bjorn and the others. So many years had passed in a flash. Hatred would also diminish with the passage of time. Rollo introduced his wife Princess Gisela and his children. Rollo now had a large family. Rollo inquired about the purpose of Bjorn's visit. Bjorn said he wanted to go raid the Roman Empire near the Mediterranean. He had to pass along the coast of Francia, so he hoped Rollo could do him a favor and give him a green light or something.
In return for what?
In return for not attacking your villages and towns, like we should do.
Rollo's not intimidated. In the Battle of Paris a few years ago, who knows who was the losing side? So Rollo directly ordered his men to seize this group of people. After being locked up for a day, several guards came to the cell and took Bjorn away alone. It turned out Rollo had gone to find someone who could read maps. The librarian brought a full map of the Roman Empire at its peak, while Bjorn's map was only a small part of the Roman Empire. Rollo's eyes lit up. The librarian's meaning was that there were a large amount of fertile land and wealth near that inland sea. But in comparison, Bjorn was still more concerned about whether Rollo could give the green light to ensure he could sail past the French coast safely.
No. Only if you allow me to come.
Who would have thought that after staying in Paris for so many years, although Rollo dressed like a Parisian, he was still a Viking at heart. At this point, Bjorn had no choice but to agree to his uncle's condition.
Everything you say is true. But I cannot deny that part of myself which is still Viking, no matter how hard I try. When you hear thunder, it's only thunder. But for me, it is still Thor beating his hammer.
Princess Gisela was furious when she heard this. At the beginning, it was you who said you would give up the Viking beliefs, and only then did I agree to marry you. Now we're married and have a bunch of children, but you want to go be a robber and raid again? If you dare to step out of the house, we're getting divorced. Who would have thought that Ragnar, the legendary leader who once rampaged across Europe, would be locked in a dog cage and subjected to such inhuman abuse by English soldiers? But the English would never have imagined that this humiliation would bring a catastrophe to their country, because this was the last scheme Ragnar carefully laid out before his death. Just now, Ragnar had taken his congenitally disabled youngest son Ivar deep into enemy territory, arriving at the city gate of Wessex, England. Before entering, Ragnar repeatedly warned Ivar that no matter what kind of torture he suffered next, Ivar had to control his emotions and appear harmless. This way, the English would not feel Ivar posed a threat to them. Although Ivar didn't know how his father would implement his revenge plan next, he still agreed to Ragnar's instructions. After explaining, father and son resolutely walked towards the city gate. Upon seeing this Viking leader who had invaded their country countless times, Ethelwulf immediately ordered his men to seize him. To vent his anger, Ethelwulf ordered the soldiers to give Ragnar a frenzied beating. Seeing his father being brutally beaten, Ivar's eyes burst with raging flames, but in the end, he still carefully listened to his father's instructions. Ragnar was beaten unconscious. When he woke up again, he found himself imprisoned in an iron cage like a beast. Before long, Egbert returned to Wessex. When he heard his old friend had been captured, Egbert was also very excited, so he immediately ordered Ragnar to be carried to the Great Hall. After many years, who would have thought their reunion would be in such a manner? Egbert prepared food for Ragnar, but Ragnar indicated he wouldn't eat until he saw his son, so Egbert had the soldiers bring Ivar out.
Heet u het, hè? Ja, vader. Det vriend toe. Zwervelisk.
Seeing Ivar eat, only then did Ragnar begin to devour the food ravenously. Egbert assured Ragnar he would not harm Ivar. After all, that was Ragnar's son. He would definitely treat him well. Then Egbert asked Ragnar if he had come because of the matter of the Viking settlement being massacred. Egbert frankly admitted that Ethelwulf had destroyed the settlement under his orders. It was all his strategy. Seeing Ragnar not say anything, Egbert called over a child. This child had blonde hair and blue eyes. Named Magnus, Egbert said this was Ragnar's son with Quenthrith. The kingdom of Mercia had now been annexed by him. Quenthrith had also died in battle, so he had been raising their son. Magnus was very happy to see Ragnar. When he was young, he had heard his mother tell many heroic stories about Ragnar. Although Ragnar was now locked in a cage, one could see from Magnus' eyes that he was full of admiration for Ragnar. However, Ragnar did not acknowledge Magnus as his son. He said Quenthrith had always looked down on him, so nothing had happened between the two of them. Seeing this, Egbert had no choice but to let Magnus leave for now. In fact, anyone who watched the previous plot would know that Ragnar and Quenthrith did indeed have a one-night stand. Now that he was a prisoner, what good would it do to acknowledge the son? Moreover, Ragnar understood that Ivar was a cripple and posed no threat, so Egbert might let him go. If he acknowledged Magnus at this time, then after his death, Magnus would definitely not have a good end. Finally, Egbert released Ragnar from the iron cage. The two finally got to the point. Egbert said Ragnar had to die because this world needed invaders like him to die, but he didn't want Ragnar to die by his hand. Ragnar knew Egbert's concern. He was afraid that once he killed Ragnar, Ragnar's sons would lead a large number of Vikings to seek revenge on him. Egbert was such a shrewd man. He wanted Ragnar to die, but didn't want to bring trouble upon himself. So Ragnar gave Egbert an idea. He told Egbert to hand him over to King El of Northumbria. El hated him to the bone and would be happy to do it. This way, Egbert's hands would not be stained with Ragnar's blood, but at the same time, Ragnar proposed the last deal of his life.
Let my crippled son Ivar go home. He's obviously no threat to you. You arrange for a ship for sailors. You just make sure my son gets home safely.
You have my word. In return,
I'll tell my son Ivar to tell his brothers that you did everything you could to save me, that you and we are sworn friends, and that King Ayla was solely responsible for my death.
Egbert agreed. Perhaps this was the answer he wanted, but Egbert had not anticipated that Ragnar was setting a trap for him with his own life. As Ivar was about to be sent home, Ragnar requested to see his son one last time. This was Ragnar and Ivar's final conversation. Only at this moment did Ivar know his father's true purpose in summoning him to England. His father wanted him to spread what happened in England to every Viking tribe. Ragnar knew he no longer had the strength to take revenge. He could only use his death to awaken the fury of his sons, thus achieving the purpose of vengeance, and the target of revenge was not El, but Egbert.
Egbert is handing me over to King Ayla, who will kill me.
If this Ayla is going to kill you, then me and all my brothers will seek her for revenge, and you know that.
Yes. Oh, you must seek revenge, but not on Ayla. And Egbert.
Ragnar's purpose in coming to England this time was precisely to avenge those Viking villagers massacred by Egbert. This matter had been pressing on his chest like a huge rock. For this long-cherished wish, Ragnar was willing to give up his life to make Egbert pay blood for blood. After explaining, Ivar was sent to the port to return to the north, and Ragnar was taken to the kingdom of Northumbria. There, Ragnar would suffer inhuman abuse and such a brutal and inhumane death